And welcome into an Ultimate Cavaliers edition, 8 a.m. style with Jason Lloyd. I am Mikey McNuggets. It was your daughter's birthday yesterday, Jason. The Cavs play the Celtics tonight, the Pistons tomorrow, and then the trade deadline's here on Thursday. So we didn't really have a great time to get in a trade deadline preview show. So 8 a.m. it is. Good morning. And
coffee in the Cavs.
Nice and early.
Coffee in the Cavs. I like it.
I like it too. A couple of things we're going to get to today. We're going to preview real quick the Cavs-Celtics game tonight. It's their third matchup of the season. So far, the series split is at 1-1, and the home teams won each game, so that favors the Cavs tonight. The Celtics are completely healthy, by the way. Not a single name on the injury report tonight. So we'll get a pretty good test and a good look at how the Cavs stack up against maybe their stiffest competition in the East. We'll also talk about Bill Simmons' trade value rankings and how we put the Cavs in our own rankings, and then we'll give our little preview of the deadline on Thursday to see what we think the Cavs should do and will do. But let's start with tonight's game, Jason. The Cavs lost their first game of the season in Boston to the Celtics in the NBA Cup. Then Boston came to Cleveland, and it was the Darius Garland defensive matchup on Jason Tatum in the fourth quarter, which helped seal the deal for the Cavaliers. It is round 3 tonight, Jason. Who is the edge, and what's a little bit of an X factor you're looking for in tonight's matchup against the Celtics?
I guess give the Cavs the edge because they're playing at home. And who is the X factor? I want to see Evan against Kristaps Porzingis. How's that? Because we didn't really get a good look at that. Obviously, Porzingis missed the series last year. And if these are the two teams that are going to face each other at the end in the East, the last two teams standing, I think that matchup is going to go a long way in determining who wins. A lot of people could point to that as sort of Mobley's coming out party. And obviously he had a great series against Boston last year, and he's used that as a springboard into a terrific fourth season in the league. And I would look at that and say, yeah, but they didn't have Porzingis. So how much different is he in that matchup? And that's to take away nothing from the job Evan's done this year. We joked about yesterday on the show. You and I have been his biggest defenders on UCSS since the inception of the show, really. And so I think he's a great talent, but I want to see him do it against Kristaps tonight.
Totally fair. And Evan is part of my X factor. So Boston it didn't change the predominant style in the NBA last season, but they kind of kicked it up a notch with how many threes they shoot. Their 5-out style, Jason Porzingis was a perfect fit for that offense. But my X factor tonight is how Boston deals with the two big lineup that Kenny Atkinson deploys with Jared alongside Evan. Because yes, Jason Tatum is a all-NBA caliber defender, but he's not as accustomed to guarding guys down low and banging with bigs as he is to guarding perimeter wings. And he does a great job guarding those wings, but over the course of 48 minutes, will his offense be able to sustain the level which Boston needs him to play at if he's having to be physical and rebound and box out and battle with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and the likes of even a Tristan Thompson if they play TT at any point? If they go with the two bigs, Tatum's Boston's second biggest player and their second best perimeter interior defender. They can try switching off and put Jaylen Brown on him or Derek White or Drew Holiday, but Tatum from a size, strength, and athleticism situation is by far their best matchup for Evan or Jared on these switches. And I'm curious if the Cavs try to attack that despite how good of a defensive player Tatum is and how much that'll wear him down over the course of a game. And if he's worn down in the fourth quarter, that gives the Cavs a major boost because he's a lot easier to stop when he's not at 100% capacity offensively. It's kind of similar to how Cleveland guarded Boston last time where they kept switching Darius Garland on him, and DG did a terrific job. But you and I said, Jason, I don't know if that's sustainable over an entire season or in a 7-game series. Can DG take that physical pounding? We don't know. I also don't know if Tatum can take 7 games of playing as a kind of big player and a big defender if the Cavs continue to utilize that two big offense as not just a here and there weapon, but a consistent threat.
That's what I was thinking as you were talking, as you were setting that up, was we've spent a lot of time talking about Mobley as a perimeter shooter and the improvements there. Drag JT into the post. If you're Evan, if you can get him on a switch, drag him into the post and let him take some contact. And you're right. The physical toll that takes, it doesn't feel like much, but if you get hit with an elbow every time down, if you're running through screens, if Jared Allen clips you with a chip, all that adds up. And by the fourth quarter, your legs aren't what they were in the first quarter. And now you're leaving a shot 2 inches short on the front of the rim. So for as much conversation, as much talk is about Evan's improvement on the perimeter, if you get JT on you, take him to the post and show him Cleveland.
Yeah. And you hear Nico Harrison's comments on the trade with Luka and saying we kind of envisioned the Cavaliers front line of Mobley and Allen and what we have now with Anthony Davis and Lively and Gafford. 2 bigs is not a disadvantage. It's hard to play 2 bigs if you don't have 2 good bigs to play. That's not an issue for Cleveland. And when that is your advantage, use it to your advantage, Jason. And I think at certain times throughout the season, maybe my only critique of Kenny Atkinson through the first 50 games is, hey, I know you want to play spread out basketball and move the ball and shoot threes. I understand it, but they got like a 6'7" guy as their second biggest player. And you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who are both uber efficient around the rim. Sometimes it's okay to feed the ball down low, do a little post-up action, and let those 2 guys eat. And I think tonight's a good matchup to kind of deploy that style of offense, not as your predominant, but just as a change of pace, a curveball, get Boston off its rhythm, and maybe you could draw JT a foul. Yep. Or maybe you can get a foul on Jaylen Brown if he gets caught on a switch, or Derek White or Drew Holiday. And from a defensive standpoint, Jason, all the teams that have played Boston of late, and I was watching the 76ers game that JT was phenomenal down the stretch in which they made a 20-point comeback in the fourth quarter. They're physical with them. Like the smart teams right now are just they're bumping Tatum. Anytime he cuts, they're giving him the elbow, like not dirty, but they're just making it tough because he has to carry so much of the offensive load for Boston. And he is more than capable of doing that. Do not misconstrue what I'm saying. But as you said earlier, those little hits add up over the course of a game. And if he's getting that treatment when he's on offense and then he goes back on defense where he's trying to catch a break, no, he has to guard Evan Mobley in the post and in pick and roll situations. That can certainly lead to some wear and tear down the stretch and be a favorable advantage for the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking back to the biggest example that comes to mind. The Warriors used to try and hide Steph. And I know we're having 2 completely different conversations here, but the Warriors used to always try and hide Steph defensively and not make him work to save his legs for the offensive end. And the Cavs used to try and make him run through as many screens as possible in those final series and used to try and do whatever you can to not hide a guy. And the only point of that is that the defensive exertion really takes a toll on the offensive game. And if you're relying on a guy to the extent that the Warriors were with Steph, that Boston does with Tatum, make him work as much as you can on the defensive end of the floor.
We got a comment here from someone named Adam the Bull who says Nico Harrison is a dullard, but he spelled Nico Harrison's name wrong. So I think Adam the Bull
He's really the dullard.
Adam the Bull may be one of the dullards in this situation. Jason, you're not on the show today, so give us your pick and prediction for tonight's game before we move on to our trade value rankings.
I think it's a heck of it's TNT, right? Is it TNT tonight?
It's TNT 7:30 tip tonight.
I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I'll take the Cavs to win because they're at home. What's the line? Do you know? I don't look at that.
I don't know what the line is off top.
I like the Cavs to win in a good close game. It comes down to the last minute.
Sweet. I'll give you my pick on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, which starts at 11. Let's do a read, Jason, and get into our next topic here. But FanDuel is back and a proud sponsor of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and the Ultimate Cavaliers Show. You guys know Super Bowl 59 is coming up this Sunday. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether you're predicting the first touchdown or who'll take home the MVP trophy, FanDuel makes it easy to place your bets and feel the thrill of every moment. With live betting all game long, you can jump in on the action, adjust your bets, and ride the wave of excitement from kickoff to the final whistle. Plus, to make Super Bowl even sweeter, new customers can score $200 when you make your first bet. Just place a $5 bet, and if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com/UCSS and bet with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of not only the NFL, but the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Okay, Jason, Bill Simmons last week released his NBA trade value column, which, like Bill Simmons, don't like Bill Simmons, doesn't matter how you feel. It's always an interesting column and gives a little perspective on how he feels certain players are valued across the league. And he made these rankings prior to the Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade and the De'Aaron Fox trade, which is a little bit funny just considering the timing. So we're going to look at where he ranked the Cavs players. Then we're going to come up with our own list to see if we agree with Bill Simmons' evaluation of how valuable each Cavalier is. He does his top 80, and 4 Cavs made the top 80. In his rankings, he takes into consideration a player's salary, their age, their length of contract, their current happiness/durability. So if in Jimmy Butler's case, he's clearly not happy, that hurts his trade value. These are real-life trade scenarios, and they concentrate on degrees. So there are levels of untouchable is basically what he's saying here. And there's levels of guys who you like but don't necessarily fall into the same category. So any questions on how he ranked them, Jason, before we dive into his rankings?
No, I'm not a huge Simmons guy, but I enjoy this. He does it every year, and I think it's fun.
It's a good exercise. All right, so the first Cavalier that falls on his group is Jared Allen, who falls into the valuable asset and great contract group. And Jared Allen ended up being number 47 on this list. He's in the same category of good asset, great contract with guys like Naz Reid, Lou Dort, Norm Powell, Austin Reeves, Derek White, who the Cavs played tonight, and Jared Allen himself. Jason, the number be damned, more the grouping. Does this feel like the right group for Jared Allen in terms of his overall trade value?
I think the category name is perfect for him. Valuable with a great contract. He's signed the extension. Obviously, he's under control for a number of years. It's hard to compare Jared Allen to Derek White, to Lou Dort. They're totally different animals. But for the category, yeah, I think it's right on.
Yeah, I have no argument either. That extension he signed before this season is going to age beautifully as the cap goes up. He's making $20 million this season. His extension goes up to like the low 30s. And when you see what some of the extensions the other all-star caliber players are going to be signing for with their starting salaries in the 60s and close to the 70s, you're getting Jared Allen for half the price of that. He is a good player on a great contract. I think that grouping is pretty spot on. Darius Garland falls in the next group for the Cavs. There's a couple groups in between Jared and Darius, but the Darius Garland category is basically cut the crap. No, he's not available. And the other players in this category were Stephon Castle of the Spurs, who is not part of the deal for De'Aaron Fox, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, Desmond Bane, Darius Garland, and Jalen Suggs. I believe, if my memory is correct, Garland's in the 36, 37, somewhere right around that range. Jason, does this feel like the right grouping for one Darius Garland?
I guess I'll say yes. I don't think he is. He's having a phenomenal year. He's having a terrific year. He's having a great bounce back year. He's got a monster contract, and I don't know that I would put him in. And he's basically calling him untouchable. I don't know that I would do that. I'm in no rush to trade him, but I don't know that I would have him in some sort of untouchable category.
I like the grouping. I don't know if I like the name of the group. Because the name of the group was, let me cut you some crap, no.
Yeah. That basically means we're not listening. If you call, I'm
hanging. Yeah, which I don't 100% agree with. But I think this group of players, Castle, Murphy, Daniels, Bane, Garland, Suggs, is the perfect pairing for Darius Garland in whatever category. Suggs has the big extension as well.
Yeah.
Bane signed the rookie max when he was eligible 2 years ago. Dyson Daniels, I'm not sure what his contract status is, but he's going to be in line for a big extension with how he's playing this year in Atlanta. Murphy signed the 3-year or 4-year, $120 million extension. He's at right around $30 million, a valuable wing for New Orleans. And Castle, a rookie, is blowing up in San Antonio. I like the pairing, Jason. I think the number in the high 30s is about right for DG. I just don't know if I love the naming of the group, but the pairing and the group itself, I think, is pretty accurate for Darius.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm hung up on the name. I would not put Darius Garland in an untouchable category. I would be in no rush to trade him. Certainly wouldn't shop him, but I don't think he's untouchable.
So the highest group in the Simmons rankings, numbers 1 through 8, were the absolutely under no circumstance will we trade this player. He called them the ultimate untouchables. And then in the second group, the one just above that, were his just untouchables. And 2 Cavs fell into this category, along with, there's more than just these 6 players, but 2 Cavs fell in this category. The untouchables were Amen Thompson, Devin Booker, Jalen Williams. Jalen Brunson was also in this group. Donovan, Evan, and Anthony Davis, who then was traded 2 days later, which I put the LOL there for. Donovan was ranked number 8 in this group, or number 9, in this group. And Mobley was either 11 or 12. I don't remember. He had Donovan slightly ahead of Evan Mobley. So, Jason, we're going to do our rankings in a sec. So don't weigh in on the should Donovan be ahead of Evan. But in the untouchable category, not the highest level, but the second highest level, does Evan and Donovan belong with this group?
Yeah. Evan was 13th.
13th.
And, I mean, it's funny because we just had the conversation on the show yesterday. If Dallas calls about Luka, what's your response? So, and I said I would absolutely trade Evan for Luka Doncic, and I wouldn't think twice about it. But aside from the nutty bonkers, once in a generation, once in a lifetime type of trade that we never, ever see, if you take out that, then yeah, that's the right spot for him.
Yeah. An untouchable is an untouchable unless an absolutely untouchable, someone in that top 8 becomes available, and then you can make the move. I think this is the utmost respect for Evan Mobley. And Simmons, when he did his column last season, had Evan in kind of the Jared Allen category of, it wasn't named the same, but it was in the high 40s range, saying, I love this guy's ceiling. He hasn't signed an extension yet, so I don't know what the contract's going to be. But this guy has more potential than I'd be willing to part ways with. And fast forward a year, and he's jumped into the top 15 of his trade value column with perennial all-pro, all-NBA guys like Anthony Davis and Devin Booker and Jalen Brunson. I love the fact that Simmons wasn't afraid to bump him up that high. Usually he's a little more step-by-step in terms of how high you rise in the rankings, unless you're a Wembanyama who was number 1 on this list. I think it's the utmost respect for Evan Mobley, and I think he absolutely belongs in the untouchable category. And the only way you'd consider moving him is if a guy like Luka Doncic or Wemby or Jokic or Giannis or SGA or someone in that completely untouchable 1 through 8 range became available. And even then, you'd have to think and consider, does it make my team better? Does it make sense with the parameters of my team? But if it's not for one of those couple guys, Jason, it's an immediate hang up.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Evan's going to his first All-Star game this year, and he's already on the top 15 of a list like that, top 13 of a list like that. It's no surprise really to you or I think we talked about earlier, we've been higher on him than a lot of people and pretty adamant that he's got to be their best player if they're going to contend for a championship. And it's good to see him finally evolve into that player.
All right, so we did our own rankings, Jason. I came up with my own rankings, and I'm curious if you agree. So I did 15 through 1. So we're going to rank all the Cavs in terms of their trade value heading into the deadline. The first couple, the bottom of the list, not so interesting. I'm curious if you agree when we get to the very top. But let's start at 15 and move our way to 1. I think Tristan Thompson has the least trade value of anyone on this team. Amani Bates, 2nd. Craig Porter Jr., 13th. I thought Merrill and Niang, I went back and forth on this one, but I went Niang slightly ahead of Merrill, Jason, just because he has another year on his contract. And I have no idea what Merrill's value around the league is. I also made this before he hit 9 threes on Sunday. So maybe I could talk myself into putting him a tiny bit higher, but Niang's only making, it's not a great deal for Cleveland when you look at how infrequently they sign free agents, but his contract's pretty palatable. He's making less than $10 million a year. Yeah.
And I mean, trade value comes down to also who are you sending them to? If it's a veteran team looking for a big who can shoot threes, George Niang's could be a lot more valuable than Sam Merrill. If you're looking for a young team trying to take a flyer on a guy who isn't going anywhere right now, Sam Merrill will be pretty appealing to them.
So any issues 15 through 11?
No.
All right, 10 through 6. At 10, I had a Okoro, 9 LeVert, 8 Wade, 7 Ty Jerome, and 6 Max Strus. My thinking, I have no idea what Okoro's value is, Jason. I know he signed the extensions, 3 years, $30 million. Once again, $10 million, not crazy, but what do you think of Okoro? LeVert's a better player than some of the guys ahead of him, but he's on an expiring contract. Wade's at a very, very palatable $6 million next year. Jerome, you can convince me, should be even higher or should be even lower, but I don't know what his next contract's going to be, and he's an expiring. And I think Strus, if you offered him straight up, you can get a first-round pick back for Strus. I'm not sure if anyone below him would get you a first-round pick in return with their current contract status.
I would actually put Jerome higher. I'd have him above Max. Okoro, maybe you can bump Niang higher now that you see 6 through 10. We're squabbling over 1 or 2 spots. I don't think Okoro has a ton of value. LeVert on an expiring. Dean, if he stayed healthy, I think would be very appealing to teams. I don't
Big
know.
if though. Big
What's
if.
that?
Big if on the
Yeah,
wave.
yeah, it is. Ty Jerome, I mean, when I started digging in last week and looking, he basically has a PER identical to Donovan. And
Yeah.
Donovan's making 35
Incredible.
million.
Incredible.
It's unbelievable. So I would definitely have Ty higher. If you're talking, you're talking player, you're talking value. For what you're getting for the year that Ty Jerome is having, making $2.5 million is incredible value. To me, that's far more valuable than Max Strus on his contract.
So I made the argument, Jason, after the game. Who was before? I was at the Atlanta game. That there may not be a more valuable asset in basketball, not on a rookie contract, than Ty Jerome this season. You're getting 6 man of the year production on basically a league minimum deal. But considering he's at the expiring end of his deal, it's the last year, I just wasn't sure what his value would be in terms of a trade. So if you want to tell me he's higher, I think I'll buy into that. So I think I should switch Strus and Jerome, which would put Jerome at number 6 at a minimum and Strus at 5. And then, Jason, that brings us to our top 5. And the core 4 is the top 4. I had Jaylon Tyson at 5 just because I think if it's a 1v1, considering how well he's played on a rookie deal with the unknown of what he could be, I think he's just a little more valuable. And I think Bill Simmons is wrong. I think he had the top 4 right, but I actually think Evan Mobley would be ahead of Donovan Mitchell in a straight trade value rankings because of the age, because of the untapped potential, because of the ceiling. No knock on Donovan. We know what his trade value is. He's been traded before. If the Cavs put Evan Mobley on the open market, I think they're getting back a ridiculous haul of picks, players, and you don't see many guys his age, Jason, with his skill set, his ability to defend, plus affect the game offensively now. I would have Mobley at 1 on the Cavs trade value list ahead of Donovan Mitchell, which is opposite of what Bill Simmons had.
I would actually bump Jerome all the way up to 5.
Jerome, okay. Jerome or Tyson. We'll do that on the show on Wednesday. I'll see what the other guys think. But
I'd bump Ty all the way up to 5.
I hear the point.
Tyson, I think, is too much of an unknown. He's been very good in short spurts, but I don't know. I would probably dump Tyson down a little bit more. But I agree with you at the top. I think Evan Mobley's number 1. I think Evan's number 1. I think Donovan's 2. And I would, again, Darius's contract is so massive, and there's so many good point guards in the league. I might even flip Jarrett and Darius and put Jarrett 3 and Darius 4.
I went back and forth on almost putting Darius at 2 just because of the age. I understand his contract is big, but it's not crazy with where the salary cap's going, Jason. Like, he's in the 45s. Yeah. Jaylen Brown's in the 65s. So it's a big contract, don't get me wrong, but it's not absurdly big. And the fact that he's still as young as he is, I think you may be selling short a little bit on the trade value.
I might be. And non-shooting centers don't command very much. Darius should probably command more. But at the top, I have no issue with Evan being number 1. I think that's absolutely right. He signed his max contract. It kicks in next year, but he's still on a rookie scale deal right now.
Yeah. All right, Jason, let's get into our deadline preview here after a quick word from Game Time. If you want to get tickets to any live event, concert, game, comedy show, you better be using Game Time. And with Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you, curating the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, which means if you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Jason, the NBA trade deadline is coming up very quickly. We are just now under 2 days away. It is Thursday afternoon. You wrote an article in The Athletic this weekend that kind of got buried due to all the other chaos that happened in the NBA with the Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis trade. But do you want to explain to the people what you foresee the Cavs' most likely outcome on Thursday being? And then I'll tell you why I either agree or disagree.
I don't think they're going to make a big splash move at the deadline. I think what you see is what you get with this roster. I do think that they need to try and duck out of the tax. We've talked about it repeatedly on the show. They're a couple million over the tax line right now. And if you get out of the tax and if you wait to start the clock until next year, it buys you an extra year before you hit repeat offender status. When the tax penalties become even more punitive, when everything begins to skyrocket on you. And a bad combination to me is the repeat offender clock starting in 27-28, which is what it will do. If they stay in the tax this year, they'll be classified as repeat offenders in 27-28. And that's when a new Donovan Mitchell contract would begin. And I was told the other day that could start around $65 million. So that's a lot of money that will be coming out of Dan Gilbert's pocket. And it's not that he doesn't want to pay it. It's that everybody has a limit to all of this. And teams like Boston are going to start to hit that pressure point this summer, with where their contracts are going. So the solution to that out of me is if you trade Tristan Thompson and Sam Merrill into another team's cap space, it doesn't have to be in the same deal. You can break them up. You can put them in separate deals. The one good thing about the CBA this year is they changed the rules so that you can trade a player into a mid-level exception. You can never do that before. So now it just creates more trade partners. It creates more avenues for, a team like Utah could take on the money, I think, with no problem. That's how they got involved in the Luka deal. Yep. And you dump a couple of twos, dump some money on them, and get under the tax. And then once you're under the tax, Danny LaRue is our cap guy at The Athletic. He's really, really good with this stuff. And I was talking to Danny a little bit last week and said, would this get them under? And he said, yes, that if you if you trade Tristan, if you trade Sam Merrill, it gets you out of the tax. And then you can add two veterans. And the way that the buyout contracts are structured, they're basically prorated for the end of the season.
Yeah.
And so it's like $1 million. So that gets you under the line. So you're out of the tax. You can go add, Ben Simmons was the name that I used. I do think the Cavs like Ben. I think they've been connected to him for a couple of years. People can roll their eyes at that. But Ben here on a buyout contract with no pressure on him is a lot different than the situations he's been in the past. He can come in here with no pressure and no expectations, and then just see how it looks, see how it goes. So that's what I would do. I know it sucks losing Tristan. It sucks losing Sam Merrill. But what other option do you have? Like, they're a product of their own success.
Yep.
And it's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem that they need to solve.
Bobby Marks tweeted this out the other day, Jason, and I thought it was fascinating. But there are 12 teams over the luxury tax currently in the NBA as of today. And the luxury tax payment is different for everyone. So the Cavs are over $1.9 million.
Yep.
It would cost Dan Gilbert $2.9 million in what he has to pay in luxury tax. Do you know how much in luxury tax payment alone, not salary cap, not player, just the luxury tax payment, the Phoenix Suns are in line to pay this season?
I can't wait to hear this because I don't know how much.
$164.3 million.
Oh my God.
In just luxury tax. The Timberwolves are second with $84.8 million. The Bucks third, $74.8. Celtics fourth, $65.6. The Lakers, this was before the Luka deal, so I'm going to skip that number. The Knicks, $36.5, and so on and so forth. The Pelicans are just 1.4 over. That's going to cost them 2.1. I mentioned the Cavs again. They are 1.9 million over. It'll cost Dan Gilbert 2.9 million, which is palatable. 164.3 million in straight luxury tax is not palatable for any owner because that's on top of paying the entire roster. And it's one thing if you're number one in the West and a legitimate title contender, you could tell yourself, okay, whatever. Suns aren't there right now, right, Jason?
No.
And it's not just this year. It's the repeat offender effect that then multiplies that number by even more that the Cavs want to avoid. I think, and I said last week, chaos presents opportunities for Cleveland. I don't think they're going to go out and make the Cam Johnson trade that we proposed last week. And I don't think they're going to be in the market to turn a bunch of their assets into one player or two players that they think could help them. I just don't foresee that being the path they choose. But I do think there's an opportunity because the Mavericks still need some sort of guard/wing help. The Lakers need a center badly. There's the whole Jimmy Butler saga. The Golden State Warriors are reportedly incredibly active right now at the deadline. Kevin Durant could be traded from Phoenix. I think there's a chance that the Cavs could be the third team that helps facilitate one of those deals. And if that's the instance, Jason, I think they could turn a couple of their bottom of the roster assets into a much better player than they probably are worth. But because it's helping facilitate the deal, it could be an opportunity for Cleveland that we don't see on paper yet. So I do think there is a chance something like that happens. I wouldn't expect it, but I do agree with you. If they're not going to make a splash move and there isn't a 3-team trade that presents itself, as good as this team is and as tight as this team is, and I'm telling you, Jason, I went to the Max Strus charity event yesterday. Every player on the roster was there. Kenny was there. Koby was there. There was 4 or 5 assistant coaches there. There were the warm-up guys that the player development staff was there, the front office. Incredible turnout to a charity event. This is a tight-knit group. But this tight-knit, overlap the financial ramifications when you could be in the middle of a championship window. And that's my answer is going to be no to that 100 out of 100 times.
It's a tough spot. Like, there is no easy.
I don't envy Koby.
No. And, I said, we talked months ago about this, and I said, the one thing you can't do is stay where you're at. Like, if you're going to go into the tax, go into the tax. Make a move, upgrade your roster, and really go into the tax. Or get out. What you don't want to do is just sit where you're at. But now that we're at the deadline, if they do sit where they're at, and they, like, I get it from a chemistry standpoint, I guess. I get why they don't want to mess with it and not necessarily cut even someone who on court is not as, I understand Sam had a great game the other night, but typically you're not counting on Sam Merrill to give you big production with this team. But I get it from not wanting to alter the chemistry of this group. But I still think I would try and get out of the tax. And the other thing worth mentioning, 2 things on this, 2 totally different topics. One, the culture that they have built here, I didn't think was possible.
Yeah.
Like,
kudos to them for that. Seriously.
When LeBron was leaving, I remember going on 92.3 saying, like, this will be as good as the Cavs have it. Like, they'll never be this good again. And that's why I was frustrated with how the LeBron era ended, because it just felt like they were not taking advantage of the greatest player in the world being here. And it felt like, what are you trying to rebuild for? Because you're never going to get it back to this level. And I mean, they haven't won anything yet. They haven't made it beyond the second round. But what they have built is you get guys now re-signing. First of all, you're getting free agents to come here. Max Strus, that never happened before. You got Donovan to re-sign. And there's a lot of factors, I think, that went into that, but he signed the contract, and that never happened before. And now you're getting calls from guys that want to come here on buyouts. If you think the buyout conversation doesn't start until after the trade deadline, then you're naive.
You're very wrong. Yeah.
So the buyout conversations are already taking place. And you've got guys, like, they have created a culture here that people want to be part of. And I didn't think that was possible. Because and not just NBA. I've talked to Guardians people. You have a really hard time getting people who want to come here. Like, Cleveland's not a destination. The Browns have their own set of issues, well beyond the city, and why they have trouble attracting people to come here. But it's been a repetitive theme on all the teams in town of guys don't want to come here, guys don't want to come here, guys don't want to be here. We have to really sell it over the top because guys don't want to be here. And they've done, like, they did it. I don't know how they did it, but they've turned Cleveland into a place in the NBA. If you give guys you want to be in LA or Cleveland, well, LA is probably going to win that every time. But they have turned Cleveland into a destination where guys will say, "Yeah, I'll go play there," and that's a credit to them. And then, secondly, completely off that topic, as we're talking about deadline moves and tax and bills and all that. You mentioned the $3 million that they would have to pay in penalties, $3 million total in being over the tax and in penalties. I was talking to Danny about this, and Danny LaRue, our cap guy at the Athletic, sorry. And he said, he believes that teams, maybe like a Phoenix, teams will dip out of the second apron, which will lessen the tax burden. Teams may dip out entirely like the Cavs. So the number is still in flux. But last year, teams who did not pay into the tax received a payout of about $12 million.
It's set to be 15.7 right now.
And I think that's probably going to go down. And that was his point, that's probably going to go down as teams get out of the tax. But even at 12, let's call it 12 because that's what last year's number was. That's a $15 million swing. Yeah. You go from paying 3 to receiving 12. And people will say, oh, it's Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert didn't care about money. Okay. It's still $15 million. Like, if somebody wants to tell you can save $3 million and you can bend over and pick up 12, would you do it? I would. I don't care how much money I have. I'd bend over and pick up an extra 12, especially when it's not hurting the core of the team. So there's a lot of reasons why I think it's wise for them to get out of the tax this year. And it has nothing to do with whether or not he wants to pay the tax. This is not that conversation. Of course he would pay the tax. He will pay the tax. He'll pay it next year. And for many, many years after.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but that's the point. They could avoid it this year to stop the clock. They can't avoid it next year.
Correct.
And they can't avoid it in 27 or 28 or 29 while the rest of the guys are under contract. If you're going to avoid the tax, this is your only plausible opportunity to be under to stop the repeater clock. There's no, well, next year, if we're not as good, we can. No, it doesn't work like that because your starting salaries of the core 4 basically bring you to the luxury tax number by itself. So you're either playing 4 on 15 every night, which is not legal, or you get under this year, which is why I do think the right move is to get under this year. With that being said, Jason, I'm not going to lie. If Koby Altman decides to do nothing at the deadline and the Cavs decide this team, this chemistry, we're not messing with it, I would personally think it's a mistake, but I wouldn't crush them. And in 2 years, if they have to make some sort of ridiculous roster move to get under because they can't afford it, I'll crush them then. But the way this team's playing with how close-knit and tight this team is, I would understand the hesitancy to do anything. I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm looking more big picture than this year. Yeah. But I wouldn't crush Koby for not doing something.
No, I wouldn't either. And, we've had this argument on the show, and we've talked to Bulls like, you got to go now. Go now. Like, now's your opportunity to win. And I agree with that. And there was a time where a month or 6 weeks ago, I probably would have said, just push, just go. But I don't think that there's a trade out there right now. Like you need to make a trade. And I don't know that there's a trade out there right now that makes them dramatically better. I mean, we've run through how many trade scenarios on the show. And a lot of them feel like just making a trade for the sake of making a trade.
The Cam Johnson's the only situation where if you can finagle Cam Johnson from the Nets, you go do it. And if you can't, excuse me, unless there's some 3-team deal like we mentioned where maybe the Lakers can give you Rui Hachimura to help them get it. Like, those are so difficult to predict. I don't want to say there's one out there and one not because we have no idea. But unless Cam Johnson is truly available and the Cavs have the assets to get him, I don't know what kind of 1-for-1 trade or one player bringing in for 3 or 4 that go out truly make the Cavs a significantly better team and a more viable championship threat. So I get it. I do not envy Kobe's position. He's in a very, very difficult spot here.
Yeah, I don't think there's a trade. Aside, the Cam thing would be great. I don't know realistically that there's a trade out there that they can make right now that makes them dramatically better. So pivot and get under the tax. Stop the clock. Don't start the clock. Worry about that next year. Next year when Evans' extension kicks in, you are a tax team. You are officially on the clock. And you have 3 to 4 years to win a championship before you have some really, really hard decisions to make.
All right, Jason, we're going to just do a couple comments real quick before we wrap up the show. There's literally just 3 or 4 of them. But first one, our guy Evan409 says, Jason in a hat is weird.
Well, this is one of those weird
to which Adam hats. The Bull responded, I agree with Evan. Jason looks bizarre with that hat. So
well, I look even worse without a hat.
No, so. Listen, you had the athletic sweatshirt yesterday I was jealous of. That's a nice hat. I'm not a dad, but
I think it's a bad angle. It's one of those like funny Bill hats. You know what I mean? Like it's got a fun, and I think the camera, it's a bad angle.
Don't let him bully you, Jason. I like that.
It's like a duck bill. I don't know.
Running SoCal says, why is Amen Thompson on a list with Booker, Spider, Mobley, and AD? Have you watched the Rockets of late?
It's unbelievable.
He does not know how to play basketball yet. Seriously, does not know how to play basketball. Is a 0.0001% athlete in the history of the world. And if he could already develop a jump shot or some sort of offensive game, Jason, I mean, this dude has a highest ceiling as anyone in basketball right now. Yeah. Like I didn't even, to be honest with you, when I saw him at 17 or 18, I was like, should he be higher? Like I almost would have bumped him up a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
He's a freak.
Running SoCal says, what if the Lakers offered a package for Jared Allen? They do need a center, but Austin Reeves is their only real trade value that would make any sort of sense to build a package around. And I don't know why the Cavs would turn Jared Allen into another defensive liability guard who likes to have the ball in his hands.
No. And I said earlier about, I want to be clear. I'm not shopping any of these guys. I'm in no rush to trade anyone from those four.
So 2 more. Ralph Bono says, can the Cavs trade second-round picks for a first-round pick, maybe a late first? Maybe. Like, you never know, but I'd say probably pretty unlikely.
That happened. The Cavs traded their first round. They basically gave it away a few years ago because of cap and roster situations, and they dumped down to the second round and got Hakeem Christmas, and he was terrible. From Syracuse.
I got a Hakeem Christmas story. I can't tell you on air, Jason, but I'll tell you. It's about someone who it's the Hakeem. Hakeem is from Philly and played in the same high school league as one of my very good friends who now works in the NBA, and they got a little tussle. Let's just put that way. Hakeem Christmas has been on my shit list for years now for nothing that he did. Might be the nicest guy in the world, but absolutely on my shit list.
That's funny.
And then lastly, this one comes from Michael Shrupska, who says, KD to the Cavs. I got another question saying, would the Cavs break up the core 4 for KD? Jason, we've kind of mentioned this in jest in the past, but if the Suns truly make KD available, does Koby make the call?
I mean, I got to see the trade. What's the trade?
I don't know the money of this. It's probably a DG Allen combo.
See, and this is like, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to this philosophical question, but I think the Mavericks are actually going through it right now with the Luka trade and bringing in AD. We talked about it on the show yesterday. I actually like the pairing of Kyrie and AD in a vacuum. I like the pairing of Kyrie and AD. I like the I think the Mavericks can win a championship in the next couple of years.
I do too.
But you have drastically reduced your opportunity to win with that trade. And set aside the fact that they could have got more from Luka, because yes, they could have got more. But just the idea of, do you cut your window in half? Do you cut your runway in half to try and maximize a shorter opportunity to win? Or do you have the Guardians theory of, we're going to be in it every year and we're going to take our chances that one of these years we're going to break through? And I don't know that it's personal taste at that point. There are some fans and probably some GMs who would say, I'm going to maximize the next 3 years. We're going to try and win a championship in these next 2 to 3 years. And then after that, then it is what it is. And there are others who will say, I want a 10-year run of success where we're going to be in it every single year. And and in the NBA, with where this thing is now with the aprons and with the taxes, maybe the 3-year is the right plan, because you can't keep these teams together beyond 3 years. I don't know if we'll ever see a Warriors team, that stayed together as long as they did and keeping all those pieces in place. And it got really expensive for Joe Lacob, and that was before the new rules were in place. So maybe the answer will ultimately be what the Mavericks did was the right call, not necessarily in the return, but in going for that 3-year window. And I'm not justifying trading Luka for AD, even though it sounds like I am, because they could have got more for it. They should have got more for it. I'm just saying, maximize a small window rather than give yourself a 6, 7, 8 year run. Which would you rather?
I have no idea what you said. I'm on the trade machine trying to figure out Kevin Garnett trades, Jason. And because the Suns are a second apron team, you cannot aggregate salary. So unless the Cavs had a $50 million player to trade for Kevin Durant, it is literally not possible to trade for Kevin Durant.
There you go.
So good idea, but no. And whatever you said, you nailed it, man. What a take.
Shut up.
What a take. That's going to wrap it up for the Ultimate Cavaliers show. We will see you in about 2 hours and 15 minutes on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We have some Cavs stuff coming out from the game tonight. Jason, this was fun. A pleasure as always, and we'll see you guys later today, tomorrow, Thursday, and we'll have some deadline reaction once that comes. For Jason Lloyd, I'm Mikey McNuggets. We'll see you later. Peace.